And for many of us, these events can stay with us for a lifetime and can manifest in our lives in many different ways. So what is the best way to cope with trauma? Let's face it, Black folk have been dealing with trauma since we've stepped on the American soil. Most importantly, how do we move forward with our everyday lives when faced with trauma? Tonight, the business of being Black is Black trauma. Please welcome the founder and executive director of Project Pneuma, Damion J. Cooper. Hi, Damion.
Hi, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Now, I would like to start with your story. You were shot.
Yes, I was.
And very, 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 very close to death. You were shot just an inch above your heart.
Yeah, I was.
So tell us how that happened. Where were you? What were you doing? Give us a visual picture of that day.
Wow, I was in college in 1992. I was a wrestler at Coppin State College, and I just left wrestling practice. And I decided I didn't want to stay in the dorms and eat the dorm food that night. I decided to go home to my mother's house and get a meal. And I caught the bus home. Once I got off the bus, I had some headphones, and I had no idea that I was being followed by two men. And being a young guy, I could have went the way where it was all a light, where I can cut across the school field and get to the house faster to that meal. So I cut across the school field and cut down the street and got right beside my house. And when I turned around, two guys came up behind me. I took out his gun and pulled the trigger and shot me an inch above the heart at point blank range. Shot me an inch above the heart, ricocheted, cracked my sternum, ricocheted, broke through the ribs, punctured the lung, and ricocheted and lodged under the nerves of my right arm.
I need time to let that soak in myself.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were right at the house when it happened.
Right
They
beside
followed you all the way to the front door.
Yes.
And what made you turn around? Did you feel that someone was there at that point?
That was it. Once they ran behind me, I can just feel with someone coming behind me. I just turned around.
Because you still had your headphones on, right?
Exactly. Yep.
But you felt their presence, and so you turned around and
that was it. The last thing I remember was the boom from the gun, the sparks and the fire that came out, and just the feeling of disorientation. And
the sparks and the fire that came out of the actual gun.
Yes.
And so you were going to your mother's house.
Yes, I was.
Who found you?
My stepdad. He actually came out the house and brought me into the home, and I was in shock. I had no idea that I was shot. He was trying to get me to understand what was going on, the gravity of the situation. And he took me up the steps and sat me down at a full-length mirror. And I vividly remember still seeing my mother sitting on her bed, rocking back and forth. And back then she was a chain smoker. And I just remember seeing her hand shake. My sister was home. She was 7 months pregnant with my nephew. My stepdad had to lock her in the room. And he tried his best to tend to me until the police came. From there.
It's okay. I want to get a few things, a couple of other things clear. So he took you up the stairs. I'm assuming there was blood everywhere. Yes or no?
No, I had more internal bleeding. So when I was shot, I was hit so quickly. Half of my shirt was blood red, the other half was still green. And I had more internal bleeding from where I was shot.
So when you say you went into a state of shock and you didn't even know that you were shot?
I did not. Only thing I knew, and the weird thing is I just knew that they put a hole in my jacket. I didn't realize I was shot until maybe 5 or 6 minutes later after the adrenaline stopped pumping. And that's when the pain kicked in. And then I knew what was going on.
So were you saying at any time, it's okay, I'm good, or?
No, I just sat there. I just sat there disoriented. He just kept trying to get me to understand what was going on. And in my mind, it was just a hole in my jacket. And I just had no idea what was going on until the adrenaline stopped pumping.
Assuming the ambulance came, you went to the hospital.
Yes.
And at what age were you when this happened?
I was 20 years old.
Okay. So now let's get to you're no longer 20.
No,
I don't want to skip over too much. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
yeah,
want to skip
yeah.
over too much of the story. But after it happened, did you know those two guys?
No, I didn't.
Did they take anything?
They did not. We were actually new to the neighborhood. I was born and raised in the projects of East Baltimore, and then my mom and stepdad, as the Jeffersons, we moved on up into a middle class neighborhood, and I had no idea who the guys were at all. Um, had no idea why they did it. I have no idea why they followed me or anything like that at all at that point.
And were they ever arrested? Did you ever have to go to court?
They were never arrested. Years later, I actually wound up mentoring the man that shot me for about a year and a half before I knew it was him.
Lord Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Damion, I am mind blown here. Okay. Please take us to that.
So,
How do you go from being shot in the heart, the bullet is an inch away from your heart, to now you are mentoring the man who shot you? Please tell us how that encounter happens.
So the encounter happened this way, Tammy. After I was shot, I became very broken and just destitute. I was a good kid, and after I was shot, I became a very angry, disgruntled Black man that people usually see, on the news and things like that. And it got to the point where I wanted to take my own life because I couldn't handle the pain. Only thing I remember is how I was taught when I was younger that you never cry, you never feel fear. And so I just dealt with that until I wanted to take my own life. It wasn't until I had other men in my life come to me and counsel me and show me that there was another way and kind of bring me back from the brink of destruction. Once I graduated from college, I decided to go to seminary and get a master's degree in theology. And while in seminary, I started doing prison ministry work. And while there, we were actually mentoring a group of young men on pre-release. And so for a year and a half, the young man who was in my group was the man who shot me, but I didn't know it. It wasn't until he kept saying instances that were just too coincidental to my life. And at that point, I was able to talk.
Like what? Like what?
Just the fact that where he lived, the neighborhood that they followed me from was an area called Freedom Way. So from the fact that how he would hang out with this other guy with their head on that night, the whole 9 yards, our lives just kept intersecting. And it wasn't by happenstance, it wasn't coincidence. And so I asked the chaplain of the prison, Chaplain Christopher Wallace, could I talk to the guy? Because I believe that it was the man that shot me. And if you've ever done prison ministry work, you're not allowed to do that kind of thing because there can be no kind of personal relationship in the prison. But he allowed me to set up a room right in front of the guard station and ask him open-ended questions. And in doing so, I was able to ask him, have you done anything that you weren't convicted of, that you've never been caught for? And then he actually began to detail about how they followed this young Black boy from the bus stop, how they followed him across the schoolyard at St. Clair Lane Elementary School. They said they was going to bust him right then and there, but this white dude was walking his dog down Dudley Avenue, which is on my street.
Oh my God.
So they stood in the cut. They watched him cross the grass, hop the gate, and walk down the street. And walked all the way down to the street called Lindale Avenue. That's the street I lived on. And the street I lived on had a bus stop. He said his boy told him, yo, if you're going to do it, you got to do it now because dude's been on the bus stop. So he said he ran up on this fool and he turned around. He pulled the trigger. And I sat there and Chaplain Wallace sat there. And Chaplain Wallace allowed me to stand up. And I looked him in his face and I said, you shot me. Tammy, I remember I had on this.
Oh my God.
And I had on this white shirt and this really ugly tie. I can't forget it. And I unbuttoned my tie and unbuttoned my shirt and pulled out my t-shirt. And I showed him the hole in my chest and said, you shot me. And as I stood up to go around the table, Chaplain Wallace grabbed me and I told him I was fine. And then Tammy, I did the hardest thing I did in my life. I told the man who put a hole in my chest, the man who would have taken me away from the kids I have now, that I forgive you. Tammy, in a year and a half, I learned that this young man wasn't a demon, wasn't a monster. His father had been killed in prison. His mother was selling her body on the street to take care of her, take care of him and his two sisters. And he decided he needed to hook up with a group of guys to protect him. The night that he shot me was his initiation night.
My God.
And to this very day, I still mentor this guy every single Saturday we talk. And the work that I do now, Tammy, is because if I can forgive the man that shot me, and I still have 5 bullet fragments in my chest. If I can forgive the man that shot me, I can teach the boys in Baltimore to forgive about how they're having daddy issues, mommy issues, or how people talk about their clothes or that they can't learn. And so I live with this. I live with this pain, but the pain that I have, I'm using it to build lives in Baltimore because our boys need it and our girls.
Listen, Damion, if forgiveness was a person, it would be you. I don't know that there's a human alive that could be that strong.
It's not easy.
Even in that moment, you didn't go off. It's, my brother, you just humbled us all. That's all I can say. You just humbled us all, every last one of us, for you to go from being shot. And this is what a purpose-driven life looks like. This is what, look, you know the Bible better than me. You can quote them scriptures because you've been to school, but I do know that there is a scripture that says all things for the good of him.
Yeah, the work to good, yeah, the good for those who are called according to his purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we leave out the all things. All things.
All things. All
Yeah.
things.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break because I have to compose myself after that. I mean, I was in that chair with you. We'll go to break. We're coming right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul.